Dun, 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 dun. All right, so here we are with episode 4. Are we on episode 4 already?
I think so.
I think we're on episode 4.
I think we are.
Check it out.
Yeah, because there was the one that was kind of in the beginning, and then the one I got really mad at, and then there was the other one, which is the Dr. Moreau one, and now there's this one.
Yeah, so welcome.
Oh
welcome.
my gosh, welcome to
Here
a grinding
is
cast.
number 4 of our Zenkoi Backdrop grinding cast, where we are looking at books that we know nothing about.
And what we're doing is reading the previews on a library app that if you live in the United States, you can get. It's called Overdrive. Just as long as you or someone you know will allow you to use their library card, you can actually get access to that library and hopefully actually their audiobooks for free and download them like you would, you know, like a regular... Yeah, like a regular borrowed book from a library. It's actually really nice.
Yeah, it behaves a lot like using Audible or Kindle, except for you're borrowing instead of buying.
Right, it's super neat.
So if you do have a local library and you interact with it, you could just ask them, be like, hey, do you have a library app? And they may be able to direct you to one.
They even have several.
You can search on the internet, but Overdrive is the one we're using. And this is going to be...
The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black.
So I made the mistake of going, oh no, Scandal, I've picked out a book for you to read, and it's called The Coldest Girl in Coldtown. Scandal just about spit their drink out so bad. It was great.
I mean, because it sounds stupid. I'm sorry. The title is ridiculous. Anyway, so we're going to read this, and at the same time, so warnings.
Did we introduce ourselves?
I don't know.
I don't think we did. Okay,
because I'm Scandal.
And I'm Liz.
Hi, guys.
And
sorry.
It's pleasant to meet you.
It's
if you are
lovely
here
to have you.
for the first time, thank you so much for coming. It's lovely to have you. If you're confused by what's going on, you can go back to episode 1, and there's a more thorough introduction.
Yep.
In the meantime, Scandal, take it away.
Oh, and just very briefly, so grinding casts are actually where we usually just have kind of like a backdrop video, while we tend to either talk about things or read and actually voice act, or we'll just discuss
But
things.
it's like a podcast with a visual backdrop.
Yeah, but you're more than welcome not to watch. It's not required. You can just have us on in the background. We'll be talking. We will typically, though, in this series, be reading books. So here we go.
All right, go, go, go.
All right, chapter 1. Nothing can happen more beautiful than death.
I'm sorry, that's
Walt
amazing.
Whitman.
It's Walt, but that's amazing.
Sorry.
I'm gonna die. My friend is funny.
Okay. Tana woke up lying in a bathtub. Thankfully, she wasn't standing in a bathtub. Her legs were drawn up. Her cheek pressed against the cold metal of the faucet. Ow!
Ow.
I don't know if anybody's ever tried laying in...
Sleeping in a bathtub.
Also, especially because it's not sloped in that direction, so literally you have your head cramped up at the worst angle at that end of the tub.
Like,
typically,
so
unless she's in an old style tub, because they were rounded then on both sides. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I know, but the thing is,
that sounds painful.
That sounds very uncomfortable. Maybe we're supposed to have her be very uncomfortable.
Maybe.
At this rate, it's rough.
Anyway, so we're gonna be doing a lot of this. Her cheek pressed against the cold metal of the faucet. A slow drip, which actually is a form of Chinese water torture, and actually people cannot sleep through this. There's a reason why it's horrific.
She could have been drugged, you don't know. Go
they
ahead.
could have broken her skull in, I know.
Drunk off her face. Onto her face. Drunk onto her face.
Drunk
onto a faucet.
Drunk faucet face. Anyway, officer, I margaritaed it. Okay, had soaked the fabric on her shoulder and wetted the locks of her hair. The entire locks. All the locks. Every single lock all over her hair. That was her whole head. Anyway, the rest of her, including her clothes, was still completely dry.
Even though her hair was wetted, not dampened.
Wetted is very wet.
Is usually wet.
Like...
rather than damp.
Like...
At any rate.
Okay. Was still completely dry, which was kind of a relief. Her neck felt stiff. They should. Her shoulders ached. She looked up dazedly at the ceiling, at the blots of mold grown into Rorschach patterns.
Cute.
For a moment, she felt completely disoriented. You should have a new paragraph. Then she scrambled up onto her knees, skin sliding on the enamel, and pushed aside the shower curtain.
All right, I'm just going to ask you, just take the book really seriously for a couple minutes, just like it's the best book ever. Dig in, let the audience dig in. You can do this.
We've been having a problem where I am still the most skeptical of the two of us, and Lies cannot handle it. Anyway.
It's okay. Act. Feel it within you. Do this.
Oh, you picked the thing you wouldn't like.
That is not good. I'm not going to do this.
What? Did you...
Nope.
Okay, fine. You should advance your rarity then. Okay.
I am.
The sink.
The
skin was piled up.
The skin of the sink.
The sink was piled with plastic cups, beer bottles, and askew hand towels. Bright, buttery, late summer sunlight streamed in from a small window above the toilet, interrupted only by the swinging shadows made by a garland of garlic hung above it. Party. Right. She'd been at a sundown party. Ugh, she said, her fingers on the curtain to steady herself, popping 3 rings off the rod with her weight. I think you'd just take down the rod at that? Anyway.
It depends on how it's supported.
Or tearing the curtain. Anyway, her temples throbbed dully. She remembered getting ready, putting on the jangling bracelets that still chimed together when she moved, and the steel-toed oxblood boots, because you totally think about this, you sound like a snob, that took forever to lace and were mysteriously no longer on her feet. Remembered the way she'd lined her foggy blue eyes, this sounds stupid, in shimmering black, and kissed her mirror for luck. Everything got a little blurry after that, because she had amnesia.
Everything got a little blurry after that because she really couldn't see well, actually.
She needed her glasses, and then
she
took
took off
and went, oh.
But she had taken her glasses off because she wanted to be pretty instead of functional. And you know...
casual disabilities are not allowed here.
Yep.
Anyway. Levering herself up, Tana stumbled to the faucet and splashed water on her face. Did I say Tana or Tana or...
Tana.
Tana, okay. I wanted to make sure that I was repeating myself from earlier.
Tana.
Tana, yeah. And splashed water on her face. Her makeup was smudged, lipstick smeared across her cheek, mascara spread like a stain. You mean like the roof or the ceiling, you know? Anyway.
Mascara spread like mold.
Right? The white baby doll dress she'd borrowed. Ooh, God. She'd borrowed out of her mother's closet was ripped at the sleeve. Tiny sleeve. Her black hair was a tangled mess that finger combing didn't do a lot to fix. She looked like a dissipated mime. That makes dissipated.
Really? Wow.
I thought dissipated would be gone.
Dissipated is like, you know, sort of fading out. Yeah, no, already dissipated.
Dissipated is gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
A missing mime.
A gone mime.
A mime that's somehow there, but still I don't even understand. Anyway, the truth was that she was pretty sure she'd passed out in the bathroom while avoiding her ex, Aiden. Before that, there'd been some playing of a drinking game called The Lady or the Tiger, where you bet on whether a tossed coin would kind of come up heads, lady, or tails, tiger. If you picked wrong, you had to do a shot. Okay, that's fairly basic drinking game. After that, there came a lot more dancing and some more swigs from a bottle of whiskey and a lot more throwing up. And Aiden had urged Tana to make out with his sulky... make out with his new sulky mouth... Whoa. Really? Aiden had urged Tana to make out with his new sulky-mouthed, strawberry-haired girlfriend. That's a creepy behavior.
Yes.
And this is her ex-boyfriend that the summary went off about?
Don't mention the summary. Okay, take the book seriously.
The one who was wearing a dog collar she'd found in the mudroom, whatever that is. He said it would be like...
You don't know what a mudroom is?
No?
Oh, okay, so a mudroom is in places where you have a lot of rain and you get like thick mud and mudslides. It's actually an entry room where you specifically take off all your muddy clothes. It's usually about the size of a closet.
Oh, the entranceway.
Yeah, but specifically you'll have like a separate door or like a horse gate next to it.
Okay.
That's your mudroom to take off your muddy boots.
I didn't know that that's what they were called. Okay.
Yeah, you take off your muddy boots there. And it's not just an entryway, it's specifically a little room.
No,
and you
I've seen
let the dogs in, you let the other animals in if you have them, and get the mud off them so it doesn't get on your carpet.
I didn't know they had a weird name. I thought they were just sort of like a closed entryway or something like that. Like you have those, but...
Mudroom. Yeah, and they don't come in at the front of the house. They're always at the side or the back of the house.
Always learning new things. What can I say? This is Lies in the Scandal for you guys. He said it would be like an eclipse of the sun and the moon in the sky. A marriage of all things dark and light. Wow. This guy is a solid 100% creep.
Sounds like it.
You mean an eclipse of the sun and moon in your pants, Tana had told him. Good job. But he had been doggedly, infuriatingly persistent. Other people around them completely fucking tolerated this because they were drunk and stupid.
Didn't seem to mind either.
At all.
Or she wasn't aware. She was off somewhere else and he was talking about this to his ex-girlfriend.
Which is creepy still.
All right. So
and the whiskey sang through her blood and sweat slicked her skin. A dangerously familiar recklessness filled her. With a face like a wicked cherub, Aiden had always been hard to say no to. Oh God, so she made out with her anyway? Worse, he knew it. Sighing, Tana opened the bathroom door, not even locked, so people could have been coming in and out all night with her right there behind the shower curtain. And how humiliating was that? And padded out into the hall. The smell of spilled beer filled the air, along with something else, something metallic and Charnel sweet. The television was on in the other room, and she could hear the low voice of a newscaster as she walked toward the kitchen. Lance's parents didn't care about his having sundown parties at their old farmhouse, so he had one almost every weekend, locking the doors at dusk and keeping them barred in until dawn. She'd been to plenty, and the mornings were always full of shouting and showers, boiling coffee, and trying to hack together breakfast from a couple of eggs and scraps of toast. Because he never fucking plans for these things, you asshole.
Because it's about the party, not about the morning after when you're people again.
All right.
All right, let's do it.
And long lines for the 2 small bathrooms, with people beating on the doors if you took too long. Everyone needed to pee, take a shower, and change clothes. Surely that would have woken her. But if she had slept through it, and everyone was already out at a diner, they would be laughing it up, joking about her unconscious in the tub and whatever they'd done in that bathroom while she was asleep, plus maybe photos. All kinds of stupid stuff that she'd have to hear repeated over and over once school started. You mean like rape? 'Cause that's stupid?
Well, it doesn't sound like she's concerned about anyone doing anything to her or her boundaries, only like, we fucked while you slept in the bathtub, ha ha.
I mean, to me it's like...
Because she really doesn't
I
sound
have no-
concerned for her own body, only her reputation.
Which seems weird. Anyway.
Unless everyone's completely trustworthy in that way.
Somehow. A lot of people like using drunk as an excuse, but okay.
Hey,
she was
maybe
just
this-
lucky they hadn't marked a mustache on her.
I was gonna say, maybe in this world, it's still safe and juvenile for the most part.
Alright, anyway. If Pauline had been at the party, none of this would have happened. When they got wasted, they usually curled up underneath the dining room table, limbs draped over each other like kittens as they made out. Anyway, in a basket, and no boy in the world, not even Aiden, was bold enough to face Pauline's razor tongue. Except her.
Well, but she's not a boy.
But Pauline was away at drama camp, and Tana had been bored, so she'd gone to the party alone. The kitchen was empty, spilled booze and orange soda pooling on the countertops and being soaked up by a smattering of potato chips. Smattering isn't a lot. Tana was reaching across for the coffee pot when, across the black and white linoleum floor, just on the other side of the room, on the other side of the doorframe to the living room, she saw a hand, its fingers stretched out as if in sleep. She relaxed. No one was awake yet. That was all. Maybe she was the first one up. Although, when she thought back to the sun streaking through the bathroom window, it seemed high in the sky. The longer she gazed at the hand, though, the more she noticed that it seemed oddly pale, the skin around the fingernails bluish. Tana's heart started to thud, her body reacting before her mind caught up. She slowly set the pot on the counter and forced herself to cross the kitchen floor, step by careful step, until she was over the threshold of the living room. Then she had to force herself not to scream. The tan carpet was stiff and black, with stripes of dried blood, spattered like a Jackson Pollock canvas. Wow, you really like your references.
Huh?
The walls were streaked with it, handprints smearing the dingy beige surfaces, and the bodies. Dozens of bodies.
Well, there was a lot of people at the party, I guess.
People she'd seen every day since kindergarten. People whom she'd played tag with and cried over and kissed were lying at odd angles, their bodies pale and cold, their eyes staring like rows of dolls in a shop window. The hand near Tana's foot belonged to Imogen, a pretty, plump, pink-haired girl who was planning to go to art school next year. Her lips were slightly apart, and her navy anchor-print sundress rode up so that her thighs were visible. She appeared to have been caught as she was trying to crawl away, one arm extended and the other gripping the carpet. Ada's, Elena's, John's bodies were piled together. They'd just gotten back from summer cheer camp and had started the party off with a series of backflips in the yard just before sunset as mosquitoes buzzed through the warm breeze. Now dried blood crusted on their clothing like rust, tinting their hair, dotting their skin like freckles. Their eyes were locked open, the pupils gone cloudy. She found Lance on a couch, posed with his arms thrown over the shoulders of a girl on one side and a boy on the other, all three of their throats bearing ragged puncture marks. All three of them with beer bottles resting near their hands, as if they were still at the party, as though their white-blue lips were likely to say her name at any moment. Tana felt dizzy. The room seemed to spin. She sank to the blood-covered carpet and sat, the pounding in her head growing louder and louder. On the television, someone was spraying orange cleaner on a granite countertop while a grinning child ate jam off a slice of bread. One of the windows was open, she noticed, curtain fluttering. The party must have gotten too warm, everyone sweating in the small house and yearning for the cool breeze outside. Then, once the window was open, it would have been easy to forget to close it. There was still the garlic, after all, still the holy water on the lintels. Things like this happened in Europe, in places like Belgium, where the streets teemed with vampires and the shops didn't open until after dark. Not here, not in Coldtown, where there hadn't been a single attack in more than 5 years. And yet it had happened. A window had been left open to the night, and a vampire had crawled through. She should get her phone and call. Call someone. Not her father. There was no way he would be able to deal with this. Maybe the police? Or a vampire hunter like Hemlock from TV, the huge, bald former wrestler, always decked out in leather. He would know what to do. Her little sister had a poster of Hemlock in her locker, right next to her pictures of golden-haired Lucian, her favorite Coldtown vampire. Pearl would be so excited if Hemlock came. She could finally get his autograph. Tana started giggling, which was bad, she knew, and put her hands over her mouth to smother the sound. It wasn't okay to laugh in front of dead people. It was like laughing at a funeral, except also is a reference to a Green Day song.
Also, though,
I think
some people do laugh as a stress response.
They
so
really
it
do,
happens.
and it's perfectly okay. Guys,
it is
if
an
you
anxiety
laugh,
response, and it's okay.
and honestly, I wish they would teach it more often at schools, but I also used to giggle a lot when I was under stress, and people used to get pissed at me. It's not a fun thing to deal with, because, yeah, people get mad. They go, are you just messing around? What are you doing? Yeah.
You're not taking this seriously, and what you're really doing is you're stressed out
Stop
as anyone else.
smiling! I got that one a lot.
But you're very anxious.
And so you smile more because you're freaking out. Alright. The unblinking eyes of her friends watched her. On the television, the newscaster was predicting scattered showers later in the week. The NASDAQ was down. Tana remembered all over again that Pauline hadn't been at the party, and that she was so fiercely, so selfishly glad that she couldn't even feel bad about it, because Pauline was alive even though everyone else was dead, because she has a huge freaking crush on her. From far away in the guest room, someone's phone started to ring. It was playing a tinny remix of Tainted Love. Oh my god, I had wondered for 3 seconds if this was actually going to be a reference to that music video. So, Marilyn Manson redid this song, Tainted Love. Or, no.
He did, he covered it.
Yeah, okay, or was it Personal Jesus?
No, I mean, he did both, but he also did Tainted Love for the Not Another Teen movie.
But I'm like, I think it was Tainted Love then, but yeah, so I'm like, so they made a reference to this party. This person really likes their references.
That's fine.
That's
I
fine.
knew the Jackson Pollock reference, at least.
That's fine. So did I. I was just like, really? Alright. After a while, it stopped. Then two phones, much closer, went off almost at the same time, their rings combining into a chorus of discordant sound. The news turned into a show about 3 men who lived together in an apartment with a wisecracking skull. The laugh track roared every time the skull spoke. Tana wasn't sure if it was a real show or if she was imagining it. Time slipped by. She gave herself a little lecture. She had to get up off the floor and go into the guest room where the jackets were piled up on the bed and root around until she found her purse and her boots and her car keys. Her cell phone was there, too. She'd need that if she was going to call someone.
Because she had to use
do
any
it
of the
right
other cell
then.
phones.
No more sitting. She couldn't answer any of them.
No, I mean, the thing is she's freaking out.
No,
So
yeah,
that's
I get
what
it.
makes
Hence
sense.
why, vocal change. It occurred to her that there was a phone closer, shoved into the pocket of one of the corpses, or pressed between the cold, dead skin and the lace of a bra. But she couldn't bear the idea of searching bodies. Get up, she told herself. Pushing herself to stand, she started, picking her way across the floor, trying to ignore the way the carpet crunched under her bare feet, trying not to think about the smell of decay blooming in the room. She remembered something from her sophomore year social studies class. Her teacher had told them about the famous raid in Corpus Christi, when Texas tried to close its Coldtown and drove tanks into it during the day. Every human inside who might have been infected got shot. Even the mayor's daughter was killed, because, the mayor doesn't frickin' matter. Anyway, a lot of sleeping vampires were killed, too, rooted out of their hiding places and beheaded or exposed to sunlight. When night fell, the remaining vampires were able to kill the guards at the gate and flee, leaving dozens and dozens of drained and infected people in their wake. Corpus Christi vampires were still a popular target for bounty hunters on television. Every kid had to do a different project for that class. Tana had made a diorama with a shoebox and a lot of red poster paint to represent a news article she'd cut out of the paper, one about 3 vampires on the run from Corpus Christi who'd break into a house, kill everyone, and then rest among the corpses until night fell again. Which made her wonder if there could still be a vampire in this house, the vampire who had slaughtered all these people, who'd somehow overlooked her, who'd been too intent on blood and butchery to open every door and every hall, closet, or bathroom, who hadn't swept aside a shower curtain. It would murder her now, though, if it heard her moving. Her heart raced, thundering against her ribcage, and every beat felt like a punch in the chest. Stupid, her heart said. Stupid, stupid, stupid. Tana felt lightheaded, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She's also taking a really long time to have a mental breakdown here.
Well, I mean, the author's stringing it out with their descriptive pacing.
They are, and it's kind of...
I mean, I think you're supposed to be feeling this intensely and they're just adding more to it.
Mm-hmm.
But right now I'm still like, okay, we're building reality. She lives in a world where vampires are real and not desirable,
The
but
exposition's
normal.
actually kind of irritating because it's taking away from the heat of the moment to me.
A little bit, yeah. I was going to say, I feel like the exposition
It's
should have
taking the punch
happened
away.
earlier, and then she should just be panicking right now. I agree.
Yep. She knew she should sit down again and put her head between her legs. That was what you were supposed to do if you were hyperventilating, but if she sat down, she might never get up. She forced herself to inhale deeply instead, letting the air out of her lungs as slowly as she could. She wanted to run out the front, race across the lawn, and pound on one of the neighbors' doors until they let her inside. But without her boots, or phone, or keys, she'd be in a lot of trouble if no one was home. Blance's parents' farmhouse was out in the country, and all the land behind the house was state park. There just wasn't that many neighbors nearby, and Tana knew that once she walked out the door, no force on earth could make her return. She was torn between the impulse to run and the urge to curl up like a pill bug, close her eyes, and tuck her head beneath her arms, and play the game of, since I can't see monsters, monsters can't see me. Neither of those impulses were going to save her. She had to think. Sunlight dappled through the living room, filtered through the leaves of the trees outside, late afternoon sun, sure, but still sun. She clung to that. Even if a whole nest of vampires were in the basement, they couldn't come up before nightfall. She should just stick to her plan. Go to the guest room and get her boots and cell phone and car keys, then go outside and have the biggest, most awful freak out of her life. She would allow herself to scream or even faint, so long as she did it in her car, far away from here.
That's actually
far
kind of
from
cute.
here,
I like
with
it.
the windows up and the doors locked, because
That'll totally stop vampires.
so unless there's something about the car that they're not telling me, but I'm just going,
Or unless basically the closed window does it, because that's basically your non-invitation.
Right. Again, I don't know what the rules are here.
I don't either.
Carefully, she pushed off each of her shining metal bracelets, setting them on the rug so they wouldn't jangle when she moved. This time, as she crossed the room, she was aware of every creak of the floorboards, every ragged breath she took. She imagined fanged mouths in the shadow. She imagined cold hands cracking through the kitchen linoleum, fingernails scratching her ankles as she was dragged down into the dark. It seemed like forever before she made it to the door of the spare room and twisted the knob. Then, despite all her best intentions, she gasped. Aiden was tied to the bed.
Oh dear.
His wrists and ankles were bound to the post with bungee cords, and there was silver duct tape over his mouth. But he was alive. For a long moment, all she could do was stare at him, the shock of everything coming over her all at once. Someone had taped garbage bags over the windows, blocking out sunlight. And beside the bed, gagged and in chains, amid the jackets someone had swept to the floor, was another boy, one with hair as black as spilled ink. He looked up at her. His eyes were bright as rubies, and just as red.
I bet he's a vampire.
Oh my god, really?
That sounds like it. Anyway,
Chapter 2.
Chapter 2.
We all labor against our own cure, for death is the cure of all diseases. Sir Thomas Browne.
I mean, you don't technically have a disease if you're not a living organism. So, alright.
Right.
I'm on
When
board.
Tana was 6, vampires were Muppets, endlessly counting, or cartoon villains in black cloaks with red polyester linings. Kids would dress up like vampires on Halloween, wearing plastic teeth that fitted badly over their own, and smearing their faces with sweet syrup to make mock rivulets of cherry-bright blood. That all changed with Casper Morales. There had been Casper Morales.
Yes.
Okay, the reason why I stopped is because I went, really? You picked something that sounds, at least to me, more Latino/Hispanic? Morales?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sounds like it.
Okay, we're really going to do that. Alright.
With Doug Jones.
I'm like, you should have picked a more generic name.
With Tom Smith.
Right. There had been plenty of books, and I mean, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but I feel like, again, where people are like, but the outbreak started with a foreigner.
Yeah. Well,
And
that happens.
Anyway. There had been plenty of books and films romanticizing vampires over the last century. It was only a matter of time before a vampire started romanticizing himself. Crazy, romantic Casper decided that, unlike decades of ancient, hidebound vampires, he wouldn't kill his victims. He would seduce them, drink a little blood, and then move on, from city to city. By the time the old vampires caught up with him and ripped him to pieces, he'd already infected hundreds of people. And those new vampires, with no idea how to prevent the spread, infected thousands. The first outbreak happened in Casper's birthplace, the smallish city of Springfield, Massachusetts, around the time Tana had turned 7. Springfield was only 50 miles from her house, so it was in the local news before it went national. Initially, it seemed like a journalist prank. Then there was another outbreak in Chicago, and another in San Francisco, and another in Las Vegas. A girl, caught trying to bite a blackjack dealer, burst into flame as cops dragged her out of the casino to their squad car. A businessman was found holed up in his penthouse apartment, surrounded by gnawed corpses. A child stood at Fisherman's Wharf on a foggy night, reaching up her arms to any adult who offered to help her find her father, just before she sank her teeth into their throats. Because we like this trope, and we're very fond of terrifying little tiny children.
Yep.
Anyway, a burlesque dancer introduced blood play into her act and required audience members to sign waivers before attending her performances. When they left hungry.
Oh, wow.
The military put up barricades around the areas of the cities where the infections broke out.
This is actually a reasonable description of how an epidemic happens, though.
It's
like
not
you have
too bad.
one person who introduces it by doing something different or by not knowing what the consequences are of what they're doing, and then everybody else who does not know how to prevent it at all or what's going on with them.
Pretty much.
I'm somewhere else and I'm sick. I need to travel across 4 different places to get home and infect everyone along the way.
Yep, pretty much. The military put up barricades around areas of the cities where the infections broke out. That was the way the first cold towns were founded. Vampirism is an American problem, the BBC declared, but the next outbreak was in Hong Kong, then Yokohama, then Marseille, then Brecht, then Liverpool. After that, it spread across Europe, but not China. Sorry.
But not China.
It spread, because it jumped from Yokohama, and then you had Hong Kong. I'm like, hang on, you went to Hong Kong, then Yokohama? You literally only have one city in China and then one city in Japan? But then we went Marseille, then Brecht, then Liverpool. How did it jump that far? And there are plenty of other giant, enormous cities. Sorry, I'm
or
having
this is what the protagonist cares about telling, perhaps.
Oh, right. It spread across Europe like wildfire. At 10, Tana watched her mother sit at her mirrored vanity and get ready to go to the party of an art buyer intent on lending her gallery a few pieces. She had on a pencil skirt with an emerald-colored silk shell top. Her short black hair gelled tightly back. She was fastening on a pair of pearl drop earrings. "Aren't you afraid of the vampires?" Tana had asked, leaning bonelessly against her mother's leg, feeling the scratch of tights against... Wow, those are terrible tights then. Right. Of tights against her cheek and inhaling the smell of her mother's perfume. Usually, both of her parents were home before dark. Tana's mother had just laughed. But she came back from the party sick. Cold, they called it, which at first sounded harmless, like the kind of cold that gave you the sniffles and a sore throat. But this was another kind of cold, one where the body temperature dropped, senses spiked, and the craving for blood became almost overwhelming. If one of the people who'd gone cold drank human blood, the infection mutated. It killed the host, then raised them back up again, colder than before, cold through and through, forever and ever. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there was only one cure. The victim had to be kept from drinking human blood until the infection was flushed out of the system, which could take up to 88 days. No clinic provided such a service because they're assholes.
Because they lacked funding, and they're jerks. I mean, because they lacked funding.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm like, people would come up with... That would be ridiculous.
I'll say,
they would also be desperate and be like, yeah, we're going to do it. Anyway.
Unless the world was a mess, there would be places that did it. On the other hand, we can just assume this is character knowledge, or maybe the author has no idea that medical things could provide those kind of resources, or that individuals might even be like, look, we're just going to lock them in a cage, isolated from everyone for 90 days while we feed them food. Normal food.
Or not be able to feed them at all, but, whatever, it works, right?
I don't know how it works.
In the beginning, hospitals had heavily sedated cold patients until a middle-aged and very healthy woman came out of her medically induced coma to attack a doctor. Some people managed to take the edge off of the craving for blood with booze or drugs. Nothing worked for others. Well, it's good you have some diversity, because everyone has genetic differences, honestly.
Yeah, like that. That's cool.
But if the police found out about a potential case of infection, the person would be quarantined and relocated to Coldtown. Tana's mother was terrified, and so, 2 days in, once the shakes had gotten bad enough and the hunger came on, she agreed to be locked up in the only part of the house that could hold her.
The basement?
Tana remembered the screams rising from the basement a week later.
There it is.
Screams that went on all day long while her father was at work, and then all through the night, when her father turned up the television until it drowned out every other sound and drank himself to sleep. In the afternoons, after school, between bouts of screaming, Tana's mother would call for her, pleading, begging to be let out, promising to be good, explaining that she was better now, that she wasn't sick anymore. Tana, please, you know I would never hurt you, my beautiful little girl. You know I love you more than anything, more than my own life. Your father, he doesn't understand that I'm better. He doesn't believe me, and I'm frightened of him, Tana. He's going to keep me imprisoned here forever. He'll never let me out. He's always wanted to control me, always been afraid of how independent I was. Please, Tana, please. It's cold down here, and there are things crawling on me in the dark, and you know how much I hate spiders. You're my baby, my sweet baby, my darling. I need your help. You're scared, but if you let me out, we'll be together forever. Tana, you and me and Pearl will go to the park and eat ice cream and feed the squirrels. We'll dig for worms in the garden. We'll be happy again. Get the key, won't you? Get the key. Please get the key. Please, Tana. Please. Please get the key. Get the key.
Lordy.
Tana would sit near the door to the basement, with her fingers in her ears, tears and snot running down her face as she cried and cried and cried. And little Pearl would toddle up, crying too. They cried while they ate their cereal, cried while they watched cartoons, and cried themselves to sleep at night because their dad's an asshole. Sorry.
Because they couldn't stay anywhere else while this was happening.
Because their dad's an asshole.
Or really strangely, weirdly lacking in all possible resources.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm like, I feel like your neighbors would be like, oh my god, let me help you.
Let the kids stay at our house. Holy
Right.
crap, let's let everyone stay at our house. If you don't have to feed these people and all you have to do is keep them, isolated for 90 days, for 88 days, whatever, 86, then just don't enter the house until that time is over.
Yeah, pretty
Go
much.
stay at a neighbor's house. Well, no, but we need to keep it. You're not keeping an eye on them anyway. Go there. Do that.
Pretty much.
Like, this sounds like unnecessary torture and darkness. I get this a lot with these kind of books. By the way, well done, Desperate Mom. But I was just like, holy cow, this feels like super unnecessary drama and angst. Unless he is absolutely isolated from all support ever, then why can he not take his children out of that experience? Or he's just like, I am so numb that I can't connect to anyone else who's hurting. On the other hand, you would think that at the beginning of it, before he'd had such trauma, he would have made good choices.
Or better choices, or more informed choices. Again, it's
or
like
some kind of supportive
they
choice
should
for
make some
his
mention of
children.
basically then how proud this guy is, or he refuses to ask for help, or something. I'm like,
Or
that's
we were meant to handle this ourselves, and we didn't want people to know, or we didn't want people to engage, or we were afraid that
which
someone
is a
would come
real
and try
thing,
and
but
kill
I
her.
feel like you would have that conversation with your kid. That just
I
seems
feel like
silly.
you'd have that conversation with your reader.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anyway, this sounds like unnecessary, like basically
Child abuse.
torture porn.
Yeah,
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it much.
Nope.
Anyway.
We're trying to make it so our character has a more tragic backstory without really making there be a reason for it. Is what it
because
feels
that's
like.
how this works nowadays.
But doesn't that sound awful? Yeah, it does. Why would it happen?
But it's a book. Yeah, it is a book, and you make these decisions. Anyway, and cried themselves to sleep at night, huddled together in Tana's little bed. Make her stop, Pearl said, but Tana couldn't. And when their father put on chain mesh gloves, the kind chefs used to open oysters, and big work boots to bring their mother food at night, Pearl and Tana cried the hardest of all. They were terrified he would get sick, too. He explained that only a vampire could infect someone, and that their mother was still human, so she couldn't pass on her sickness. He explained that her craving for blood was not so different from how someone with pica might crave chalk, or potting soil, or metal filings.
Okay, so that's super aware and, like, thoughtful compared to I'm keeping you in the house even when you're alone with your screaming infected mother.
Which is not okay. I'm like, there's a contrast here that's bothering me.
That's weird.
He explained that everything would be fine so long as Mom didn't get what she wanted, so long as Tana and Pearl acted normal and didn't tell anyone. There we go, what was wrong with Mom. Not their teachers, not their friends, not even their grandparents, who wouldn't understand. There we go.
That's
he sounded
what's going on.
calm, reasonable. Then he walked into the other room and downed half a bottle of Jack Daniels. And the screams went on and on. It took 34 days before Tana woke and promised her mother that she'd help her get free. It took 37 days before she managed to steal the ring of keys out of the back pocket of her father's tan Dockers. Once Dad left for work, she unlocked the latches, one by one.
Oh, Lord.
This is stupid.
This
Anyway,
is kind of, I'm just like,
Anyway, the basement smelled damp, like mold and minerals, as she started down the creaking wooden stairs. Her mother stopped screaming the moment the door opened. Everything was very quiet as Tana descended, the scratch of her shoes on the wood loud in her ears. Her foot hesitated on the last step. Then something knocked her down. Tana remembered the way it felt, the endless burn of teeth on her skin. Even though they weren't fully changed, the canine still bit down like twin thorns, or like the pincers of some enormous spider. There had been the soft pressure of a mouth, and pain. There had been another feeling, too, as though everything was going out of her in a rush. She'd fought back, screaming and crying, kicking her chubby little kid legs, and scrabbling with the nails on her pink child fingers. All that had done was make her mother squeeze more tightly, make the flesh of her inner arm tear, make her blood jet like pumps from a water gun.
Ugh.
That was 7 years ago. The doctors told her father that the memory would fade, like the big, messy scar on her arm, but neither ever did.
Ugh.
Chapter 3.
Death is the dropping of the flower, that the fruit must swell. Henry Ward, Major.
The whatting of the flower? The thropping?
Death is the dropping of the flower, that the fruit may swell.
Got it. I'm like, I appreciate the interpretation, but I'm like, I can't understand you.
I'm sorry, you just don't understand art.
I do not. I'm lacking in my art skills. I'm like this book. I want to put more commentary in there, but I'm like, a lot of it just seems unnecessarily dark for no reason. I'm also like going again. In most cases, if you have any friends or any like confidants or any social community at all, you can find someone to help you. Even if it's like, I understand what's gone on with your mom. I am suddenly going to be like, you know what? You kids need to go visit your grandparents and you'll never even know what's gone on with your mom. And
She's
you could
cold.
even
Time to go see Grandma!
Yep, time to go see Grandma for 2.5 months. For 3 months, it's fine.
Well, is it, if it's like nearly 90 days, so 3 months?
3 months.
3 months.
And the thing is like, and Grandma going, but I can't take them that long. Look, I will A, pay you, B, they can go see another relative, C, something else is going on. We're going to imply marital problems to my side of the family and say that we need to work on this. God, it's been so long. Take your kids back really soon.
Things will be fine. Anyway, chapter 3. Aiden's eyes were wide and terrified. He strained against the bungee cords, trying to talk through the tape. Toddin couldn't make out the words, but she was pretty sure from the tone that he was begging her to untie him, pleading with her not to leave him. She bet he was regretting that time he'd forgotten her birthday, and also the way he'd dumped her via a direct message on Twitter, and, almost certainly, everything he'd said to her last night.
Oh my God. She's like, I bet you regret it now because you want my help. That's surprisingly vindictive for someone who's having a panic attack.
Yeah, pretty much. That's
I'm
very
like, that
directed.
really is like, wow.
Well, you're directed for being confused as all hell. She almost started giggling again, hysteria rising in her throat, but she managed to swallow it down. Sliding her fingernail under the edge of the duct tape, she began to peel it back as gently as she could, because the other person in the room suddenly fucking didn't exist, and she didn't worry about that at all, even though he's sitting there and staring at her. What the fuck are you doing? Sorry, this is actually kind of irritating when they go, and the character was there, and then we completely forgot them. Character,
seems
I'm still here!
to
Hello?
happen a
Rolls
lot.
over. Hello!
And a very short sentence will fix this kind of problem, because obviously you can't write all your characters at the same time. But it can be like, as she edged towards the bed, the other character stood, sat still and stared. And then you're just basically, they're simply watching and doing nothing else because it's been established, even while she moves and does other things. Because entering the room and having him sort of stare is one thing, but then having him just stare and do nothing after she's doing other stuff, without stating it, it feels a little awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Without saying, this is still what's going on.
Aiden winced, his caramel eyes blinking rapidly. Across the room, the rattle of chains made her stop what she was doing and look up. It was the vampire boy. He was pulling against his collar, shaking his head, and staring at her with great intensity, as though he was trying to communicate something important.
Was he also duct taped? I can't remember. I thought he was just chained.
I think he was just chained. That's why I'm going,
Can vampires not speak?
Right. He must have been handsome when he was alive, and was handsome still, although made monstrous by her pallor and her awareness of what he was. Don't worry, that will eventually go away, though.
Because clearly, if you've ever said he's handsome right at the beginning of something, it means you're going to find him attractive during the story.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's how that works. Guess what it is? It's the introduction of a love interest.
Oh, look, they're both. This is going to be a love triangle is more what this is going to be.
He's going to regret dumping her because she's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
And his other girlfriend's now dead. And live is much more attractive than dead.
Right?
All right, here we go.
His mouth looks soft, his cheekbones sharp as blades. Oh, God, please shoot me in the eye.
Cheekbones like Maleficent. Sorry.
And his jaw curved, giving him an off-kilter beauty. You mean he looked like a fucking Bishonen?
He looked feminine, therefore attractive.
Uh-huh.
Because I am clearly also attracted to girls.
Right.
In this
His
case-
black hair was a mad forest of dirty curls.
Ew.
Yeah, right. As she stared, he kicked a leg of the bed with his foot, making the frame groan, and shook his head again. Yeah, as if she was going to leave Aiden to die because the pretty vampire didn't want his snack taken away. Stop it, she said, louder than she'd intended because she was scared. She should climb over the bed to the windows and pull down the garbage bags. He'd burn up in the sun, blackening and splintering into embers like a dying star.
But she's going to talk to him first and give him a chance to redeem himself because something's going to happen.
Yeah, pretty much, because we need some sympathy here in this food tube experience.
Because she can't just kill him because that wouldn't be interesting.
Yeah, pretty much. She'd never seen it happen in real life, though only watched it on the same YouTube videos as everyone else. And the idea of killing something while it was bound and gagged and watching made her feel sick. She wasn't sure she could do it. I mean, honestly, you probably really could. A lot of people are shockingly, especially when they're traumatized, quite capable of doing some horrific things.
On the other hand, I'm like, that is a level of empathy of just going,
Well, immediate empathy, which amuses the hell out of me, honestly.
right? Of going, I don't know if I can do this thing. But also this experience of, yeah, just being like, you know, if the bear is trapped, even if it would tear me to pieces if it wasn't trapped, I still feel bad for it trapped.
That's fair. Stupid. Stupid. Stupid, said her heart. Tana turned back to Aiden, her hands shaking now. Stay quiet, okay? At his nod, she pulled the tape free from his mouth in one swift rip. Ow, Aiden said.
Ow. Ow. Sorry, if you haven't seen our other videos. Ow.
Then he lunged at her, teeth first. Tana was reaching for the bungee cord restraining his wrist when it happened. His sudden movement startled her so much that she stumbled back, losing her balance and yelping as she fell onto the pile of jackets. His blunt canines had grazed her arm, not far from where her scar was.
Because it's always that arm. Why is it always that arm?
You
God
bitch!
Damn you guys, it's always that arm.
Aiden had tried to bite her. Aiden was infected. She'd made a noise loud enough to maybe wake wake a nest of sleeping vampires. You asshole! She said, anger the only thing standing between her and staggering panic. Forcing herself up, she punched Aiden in the shoulder as hard as she could. He let out a hiss of pain, then smiled that crooked, sheepish smile that he always fell back on when he was caught doing something bad. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I've been sitting here for hours, thinking about blood. She shuddered.
Apparently it came on a lot faster with him than with her mom.
know!
Like,
Holy shit!
In the first few days, they start to crave blood. In the first couple of hours, this jerk already is going to try and tear your face off. Oh, I'm sorry, that arm off.
Oh, yeah, right. Mm-hmm. She shuddered. The smooth expanse of his neck looked unmarked, but there were lots of other places where he could have been bitten.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, Lord. Sorry, that was me throwing that in because that's annoying.
I mean, it was actually there. You just embellished it.
Yeah, because I'm irritated.
Like, that's actually a sentence in there.
Mm-hmm. Please, Tana, please. She'd never told Aiden about her mother, but he knew. Everyone at school knew. And he'd seen the scar, a jagged mess of raised, shiny skin, pale with a purple cast to the edges. She'd told him how it felt sometimes, as if there were a sliver of ice wedged in the bone underneath. If you gave me just a little, then, Aiden started. Then you'd die, idiot. You'd become a vampire. She wanted to hit him again, but instead she made herself squat down and root among the jackets until she found her own purse with her keys. When we get out of this, you're going to grovel like you've never groveled in your life. Because for some fucking reason, I'm going to save you. Because I don't understand why you would... Anyway.
Because I couldn't save my mom. And I'm having a experience of going, this is my only childhood friend that has survived this, except for the one that wasn't here. And so obviously I need to save the only survivor. Even if I'm bitter, and he dumped me, and he's a jerk, and he's also kind of stupid.
And honestly, really kind of a creep.
Because that's what you do socially. You save the other people who survived like you did.
Right.
You help the other survivors.
This is still irritating. Whatever.
It doesn't seem as unreasonable to me, though.
That's fair, but it still irritates me.
Irritate away. Go for it.
I'm good at being irritated. It's fine. All right, the vampire
so
boy
this is
kicks...
lies is tolerant and scandal hates it all.
Pretty much, though. I mean, because honestly, I've run into this kind of plotline a lot,
Oh, no,
and
like
it
I
bugs
said,
me.
We picked these books because they sound unreasonably tropey based on the limited descriptions that they're having. And
And some of them are actually
really?
kind of accurate, and some of them are really like, what? You didn't mention that at all. Welcome to hell.
What's going on? Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, here we are.
The vampire boy kicked the bed again, chains rattling. She glanced over at him. He looked at her, then at the door, then back at her.
There's other vampires coming.
He widened his eyes, grim and impatient. This time, she understood. Something was coming. Something that had probably heard her fall.
Except for the other rooms on the way to this room weren't blackened out, and so it couldn't get there because there was sunlight streaming in all over the house. But that's okay, don't worry about that.
It's fine. She waded through scattered jackets to a dresser and pushed it against the door, hopefully blocking the way in. Cold sweat started between her shoulder blades. Her limbs felt leaden, and she wasn't sure how much longer it was going to be before she couldn't go on, before the desire to curl up and hide overtook her.
Before she didn't actually decide to kill him, but she just tore open the window so they could get out of the damn house anyway.
Yeah, right. She looked over at the red-eyed boy and wondered if a few hours before he'd been one of the kids drinking beer and dancing and laughing. But she didn't remember seeing him. But that didn't mean anything. There'd been some kids she didn't know and probably wouldn't have remembered. Kids from Conway or Meredith. Yesterday, he might have been human, or maybe he hadn't been human for 100 years. Either way, he was a monster now. Tana picked up a hockey trophy from the dresser. It was heavy in her hand as she crossed the floor where he was chained, her heart beating like a shudder in a thunderstorm. I'm going to take off your gag. And if you try to bite me, or grab me, or anything, I'll hit you with this thing as hard as I can, and as many times as I can. Understood? He nodded, red eyes steady. His wax-white skin was cool to the touch when she brushed his neck to find the knot of the cloth.
You're kidding. The cold ones are cold? Oh, sorry.
You mean like, I noticed my mother was getting cold, and everything was cold, and the cold, and the... Sorry.
And this guy is also
Cold?
How weird.
To find the knot of the cloth. She'd never been this close to a vampire, never realized what it would be like to be so near to the someone who didn't breathe, who could be still as any statue. His chest neither rose nor fell. Her hands shook. She thought she heard something somewhere in the bowels of the house, a creaking sound, like a door opening.
Ugh.
She forced herself to concentrate on knotting the cloth faster, even though she had to do it one-handed. She wished desperately for a knife. Wished she'd been clever enough to pick up one when she'd been in the kitchen. Wished she had something better than a pot metal trophy covered in a gold paint. Look, I'm sorry about before, Aiden called from the bed. I'm half out of my head, okay? But I won't do it again. It would never hurt you. You're not exactly someone who's big on resisting temptation, Tana said. He laughed a little before the laugh turned into a cough. I'm more the run toward it with open arms type, right? Really, please believe me. I scared myself too. I won't do anything like that again. Infected people got loose from restraints and attacked their families all the time. Those kinds of stories weren't even headline news anymore.
Nope, they're just normal.
Pretty much.
That's just how it works.
But vampires weren't all monsters, scientists kept insisting. Theoretically, with their hunger sated, they are the same people they were before, with the same memories and the same capacity for moral choice. Theoretically.
When the hunger doesn't drive them, when guys aren't controlled... when individuals are not controlled by their sexual or baser urges, / when people aren't hungry and dying from it, they're actually reasonable.
Right, because
Really?
comparing a
How
lack
strange.
of sex to hunger is completely the same. That's the one thing that I hate as a trope, is where it's like, you will not die if you don't get sex.
See, the
Period.
only reason I went that direction was because of her
It's very
going,
common.
Your temptation, running towards it with open arms, and I'm just like...
Well, that's
this
what he said.
idea-
I'm that person. Yeah.
This idea that that's a thing. But the whole you're crazy when you're hungry. Yeah, you know what? Regular humans, when they're starving, also make really unfortunate choices.
But most of the time, it has nothing to do... I don't know. I'm just like, I get it, but I also get uncomfortable. People are like tying this to sex. There's a lot of predatory abuse and grooming and whatever else. I mean, these stories are interesting, but they really do start sounding one note, and it bugs me.
Yep. All right, here we go.
Okay, finally, the knot came apart in Tana's hand. She scuttled back from the red-eye boy, but he didn't do anything more than spit out the cloth gag. Through the window, he said. His voice had a faint trace of an accent that I didn't fucking know he had an accent, so I'll have
Because
to do
the
that
author
eventually.
wrote it afterwards instead of beforehand, and now you get to choose an accent because they didn't say what kind.
Oh, right. Let's pick a really annoying one.
Oh, no, faint, really annoying one.
Faint, really annoying.
It's got to be a faint, annoying accent.
As a faint, annoying accent.
Oh yeah, that's extremely faint. Yeah,
Extremely faint.
it's
A
completely
faint ass bit. Anyway.
the subtlest, the most barely there.
One that made her pretty sure he was no local kid infected the night before. Go. They are swift as shadows. If they come through the door, you won't have time. But you cover me with a heavy blanket, 2 blankets, and I'll be tucked in tight enough against the sun. Despite looking only a little older than Aiden, the calm command in his voice spoke of long experience, and I will have the worst conflicted
On
crush
this
experience.
person who is an adult while I am a child, but they look like a child, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine, you know. I mean, and honestly, that sort of stuff happens all the time, and I feel like people really should understand that. People get crushes on individuals who are older than them a lot.
It's true.
And
because the people their own age are as stupid as they are, and they're going, I want someone who's not as dumb as me so that we can work together and be more successful.
Now, is that necessarily okay? Not really, because you can really have a lot of basically abusive power situations going on.
You can have a very unfortunate power dynamic.
Yeah.
However, books like to say that if you look similar ages, it's okay.
Right?
They really do. And you know what's funny? Because one of the biggest problems is people go and they claim, well, they looked like an adult when illegal things happen in relationships.
It's true.
And then in books, we condone it everywhere.
Right. It's kind of interesting, actually. And again, this is not to say that this is a bad subject to explore, but it's just kind of frustrating.
It is one of those things, and people are very excited about it. What I find interesting is that, and I'll just go off on this real quick because we've got to wrap this up soon, and you've got to finish your chapter, and we've got to call it done. But this idea that somebody who is an adult, just because they look like a child, is going to then be interested in a child. If they're considered a healthy, balanced, reasonable adult, one who's not starving, what have you, in the context of the book, then why would they have any attraction in the other direction? It'd be like being attracted to your child or to a grade school kid when you're 40 and going, if I am a healthy, balanced adult, why would I ever do this? Why would this even happen? You know that thing where if you've had any like age experience at all, like if you're over 15 and you're listening to this and you go, you know what? I thought I looked like an adult when I was young. I thought the characters in the Never-Ending Story looked mature and grown up. And then I'm 20 years old now and I'm going, God, we all looked incredibly like kids.
Yeah.
That experience is very normal, natural, and healthy. And so you would have that going on with your vampires and immortals as well.
Constantly and
general.
consistently. Yep.
Going, you look like kids. Sure, I look like a kid too, but oh my God, I look like a child.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway.
Press forth with
His
your
voice spoke of
mild
long
accent.
experience. Tana felt momentarily relieved. At least someone seemed to know what to do, even if that someone wasn't her, even if that someone wasn't human. Now that she was out of his range, she set down the trophy carefully, back on the dresser, back where it belonged, back where it would be found by Lance's parents. And Tana stopped herself, forced herself to focus on the impossible here and now. What got you chained up? She asked the vampire. I fell in with bad company, he said, straight-faced. And for a moment, she wasn't sure if he was joking. It rattled her, the idea that he might have a sense of humor. Because that's totally...
How dare you be a person, even though my younger sister fangirls over a famous vampire?
Right? That's one thing, actually, that I'm kind of having a weird...
Feels super weird.
My younger sister, who was also there, and we've had severe... I now understand she was really young.
Severe vampiric-related trauma. It's ingrained into my arm, and we assume our mom is dead from it, based on this.
Yeah,
and you're like... I am fangirling over a hot vampire in a Coldtown.
And I also really like a vampire hunter. Wow, that's like the ultimate sandwich there.
That's hilarious. Going, God, if both of them came to my house.
Oh my God. I'm like, that's also really insensitive, I feel like, too.
And
because that could also be a level of, like, me trying to deal with my trauma. Sometimes people take the thing that traumatizes them or scares them, and they find it appealing.
This is my absolute favorite, most glorious, beautiful shark named, Jaw Titanium. And then this is my favorite shark hunter ever. I love him.
Right. Oh my God. Anyway.
His name's Brutus the Killer.
Oh God. Okay. Be careful, Aiden called from the bed. You don't know what he might do.
I don't know what you might do, you dork.
We all know what you'd do, though. Don't
Yes.
we?
Good
The vampire
job.
accused Aiden in his silky voice because now he's got a silky. Fuck
Now
this!
he's got a silky voice with a
Oh,
soft.
they are
English
really
voice.
gonna try to drive this home. I'm like, that makes.
He's hot. Well, he could have been hot. I loved how she said when he was human, he was probably hot. Like, you're not attractive now. And then suddenly he's attractive everywhere.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm like, this is what the story is, though. This is the thing that I've heard about, like, Holly Black, like other people. These writers are all going, but what I'm doing is I'm trying to pull
Monsters.
a teenage angst and monsters are hot, which is fine. I think monsters are hot, too. But I can read you from 3 million miles away.
On the other hand, is the monster hot or not hot when you see it and go, well, it used to be hot?
Well, it is hot. Well, a soft and silky voice. Oh,
Well,
well,
a soft accent. Well, silky, really.
God.
Seductive, genuinely. Honestly, he looked my age, but he sounded like he was an experienced, like a 90-year-old. Yes!
outside, the sun would be dipping down toward the tree line. She
And
didn't
I
have
needed to get in
time.
my infinitely safe car.
Hang on, she didn't have time to make good decisions. She had to take her chances. There was a comforter on the bed underneath Aiden, and she started yanking it. I'm going for my car, she told both of them. I'm going to pull up to the window, and then you'll both get in the trunk. I have a tire iron. Hopefully, I can snap the links with that. The vampire looked at her in bewilderment. Then he glanced towards the door, and his expression grew sly. If you would free me, I could hold them off. Tana shook her head. Vampires were stronger than people, but not by so much that iron didn't bind them. I think we're all better off with you chained up. Just not here. Are you sure? Aiden asked. Gabriel's still a vampire. He warned me about you, and I'm about... he warned me about you...
He get a name?
Hang on.
Sorry.
He warned me about you and about them. Didn't have to. I'm not going to repay that by... She hesitated, then frowned. What did you call him? That's his name. Inside, Gabrielle. The other vampires, while they were tying me to the bed, they said his name. Oh. With a final tug, she pulled the blanket free and tossed it over to Gabrielle.
Damn it, why does he have a name?
Why does he have a nice, flowy, floofy name? Because this is not a trope at all! Anyway, her heart thundered in her chest, but along with the fear was the reckless thrill of adrenaline. Honestly, I thought the beginning wasn't all that bad. By comparison to this, now I'm just irritated.
This is awkward. This has gone straight into now we're
Romance.
just about romance.
Uh-huh.
That's it. And the other boy going, but you
Jealousy.
can't.
No, I like her.
I don't like her, but I don't want you to like her. I don't want her to like you. That's it. I don't want her to like you. Damn it. I just want blood. Oh, I'm confused. I would never hurt you.
Right. Her heart thundered in her chest, but along with the fear was the reckless thrill of adrenaline. She was going to save them. There was a sudden scrabbling at the door, and the handle began to turn. She shrieked, climbing onto the bed and hopping over Aiden to get to the window. That he tried to then bite your leg. I swear to God.
Well, he tried to, tear your leg open with his face.
No shit. The garbage bag ripped free with one tug, letting in the golden, late afternoon light. Gabrielle gasped in pain, so he is probably supposed to have, like, a Hispanic accent of some kind, honestly. Pulling the blanket more tightly around him, turning his body as much behind another dresser as he could. Lots of sun still, she shouted between breaths. Better not come in. The movement outside the door stopped.
Because we totally believe you.
Oh my God. You can't leave me here, Aiden said as Tana shelved at the old farmhouse window, swollen by years of rain. It was stuck. Her muscles burned, but she pushed again. With a loud creak, the window slid up a little ways, enough to get under, she hoped. The cool, sweet-smelling breeze brought the scent of honeysuckle and fresh-mowed grass.
Okay, I'm sorry, but if it only slid up a little ways, it's gotta be big enough for your freaking head. And skulls are not small.
No shit.
And usually, your hips are bigger than your skull.
Yeah.
But hopefully you can get yourself in there and pry it open more with the wholeness of your body.
Yeah, right.
Anyway.
I'm going, don't pee yourself from so much pressure, honestly.
Dang it. I woke up from passed out at a party. I'm so amazed she didn't have to pee.
I am too.
Honestly, you
Or
woke
going,
up...
I am so fucking dehydrated, I'm gonna die.
Right? One of these two things.
Because she has pissed her pants. Honestly, let's be real. Because if she's that unconscious, you possibly have...
Either you've leaked yourself, or literally she would be bladder bursting. I've got to pee like everyone else who should be beating down this door.
But you know what? She's inhuman. It's fine. Okay.
She's a protag. That's a different breed.
I forgot. Oh my God, you're right. I forgot. Looking over the lump of comforter and jackets and shadow where Gabrielle was hiding, she took a deep breath. I won't leave you, she told Aiden. I promise. No one else was going to get killed today. Not if she could save them. Certainly not someone she once thought she loved, even if he was a jerk. Not some dead boy full of good advice. And she hoped not herself. either. But you don't fucking know that. I'm sorry.
Full of
I'm
good
like,
advice. He's given you one piece
he's
of direction.
barely done anything. I'm like, that's very
full of good advice.
full, because my standards are this big.
I mean, I'm panicking, but somebody is a voice of reason, which takes the decision off of me, which helps.
Which
So in
is
this
not
case-
necessarily full of good advice. Just going, you're the one who makes decisions, and I don't have to.
And I appreciate that because I don't want to.
Yeah, pretty much. Leaning forward, she ducked her head under the window frame, ignoring the splinters of worn gray wood and old house paint. She tossed out her purse, and she tried to shimmy a little to get to the swell of her breasts over the sill and cant her hips so that she could grab hold of the siding and pull herself forward enough to drop down headfirst into the bushes.
We really
Ow.
had to talk about your breasts.
And the cant of her hips.
And it's not get your chest over, it's literally get your breasts over.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Anyway, by the way,
Anyway.
if you weren't convinced what this book is more about, I'm like also going, again, the cant of the hips thing, I'm sorry, that's such a fan fiction, like I've read that so often, this is so much in sex, I can't even tell you.
That's quite a word.
Uh-huh.
Quite a descriptive.
I was like, and suddenly if someone was behind her, they'd be going, well.
Well, my dear.
Uh-huh.
Unless the head of the bed is away from the window and the foot of the bed is at the window, which is very odd for us, as a culture, we don't usually do that, he should be trying to bite her fucking legs off.
He really should, honestly.
Like, what is wrong with him? That's what he should be doing.
It was based on his behavior, yeah.
She should also be very concerned that he would be trying to do this as well.
Pretty much. Anyway, it was a short, bruising fall. For a long moment, the sunlight was too bright and the grass too green.
More like a
She
short
rolled-
scraping fall because of the damn bushes.
Oh, I know. She
Go
rolled
ahead.
onto her back and drank in the day. It's okay. I'm already annoyed, and now you're slowly joining me, and I am greatly delighted.
Excellent.
She was safe. Clouds blew across the sky until the fucking sun goes down. Anyway,
She was
soft
safe.
and pulled as cotton candy. They shifted into the shapes of mountains, into walled cities, into open mouths with rows and rows of sharp teeth, into arms reaching down from the sky, into flames, and a sudden gust. That was a really bizarre hallucination, my dear.
That
A
super
sudden gust
was.
made the branches of the trees shiver, raining down a few bright green leaves. A fly buzzed in the grass near her shoulder, making her suddenly think of the bodies inside, the way that flies would be landing on them, of opalescent maggots that would hatch and tunnel, multiplying endlessly, spreading like an infection, until the black flies covered the room in the shifting carpet. Until all anyone could hear was the whirring of their glassy wings. Tarna started to shake, like the trees, on the floor, on the ground. Honestly, she's still on the freaking ground.
That also
Oh.
sounds like an intimate
my God.
familiarity with left for, like body scenes.
Uh-huh.
Like long
was she
rotting
obsessed?
corpses.
Yeah, I'm like, was she obsessed then after or before?
Or maybe it's been on TV a lot. Maybe it's one of those things where they've reported these kinds of scenes and they actually just show the flies because that's not sensational anymore.
Uh-huh, pretty much. Tana started to shake like the trees, her limbs trembling, and was overcome by such a wave of nausea that she was barely able to twist onto her knees before she was sick in the grass. So you flipped over onto your knee. Anyway, you said that you were allowed to lose it, some part of her reminded herself. Not yet, not yet,
Not
she
yet.
told herself.
There's a survivor now.
Although
shit.
the very fact that she was renegotiating bargains with her own brain suggested things had already gotten pretty bad. Forcing herself up, Tana tried to remember where her car was parked. She walked across the sloping lawn, toward a line of cars, and then past each, touching the hoods, feeling as if she was going to vomit again every time she noticed stuff inside. Books, sweaters, beads hanging off rear view mirrors, small tokens of people's lives, the things they would never see again.
Things that reminded her that it was a bunch of dead people inside.
Good job, I'm very proud of you. Finally, she got to her own Crown Vic, opened the door with a creak, and slid inside, drinking in the faint, familiar smell of gasoline and oil. She'd
Why
bought
does
it for $1,000 the day she'd turned 17 and sprayed its scrapes with a can of lime green Rust-Oleum, making it look more like a vandalized cop car than anything else.
Wow.
She and her dad had rebuilt the engine together. Holy shit, your
Really?
dad... Wow. During one of the few periods when he came out of his fog of misery, long enough to remember he had 2 daughters. It was big and solid, and it drank gas with an unquenchable thirst, so your dad basically let you get a fucking disaster of a car in an economy that sounds like it probably would have tanked slightly due to the fact that you have vampires. This is where
Due
it's
to so many people dying all the time.
uh-huh, or, and vampires running rampant. I'm like, that just sounds stupid.
Anyway.
Anyway, When she slammed the door shut for the first time since she walked out of the bathroom, maybe for the first time since she arrived at the party, she felt in control. She wondered how long it would be before even that slipped through her fingers. Holy shit, there's another one.
Well, she's going to put 2 boys in the back seat.
Right?
Or, oh, sorry, in the trunk. In the trunk.
I'm going, there's more to this. Holy cow.
We're at an hour. Do you want to call it?
Yeah, let's just call it.
All right,
anyway,
let's go read the what is it?
synopsis.
Synopsis.
The little summary that people did for the
All
back
right,
of
so
this.
that was chapter 1?
That was chapter 1 through 3.
All right, check it out. We don't even know if they end up in the trunk, but we'll just assume they do. She
Pretty
ends
much.
up with one boy who wants nothing but blood and one boy who doesn't have any blood in her trunk.
This is the coldest girl in Coldtown with Holly Black. So this is now the summary. Tana lives in a world where walled cities called Coldtowns exist. In them, quarantine monsters and humans mingle in a decadently bloody mix of predator and prey. The only problem is, once you pass through Coldtown's gates, which are not... That's not a single city. Anyway, pass through Coldtown's gates, you can never leave. One morning, after a perfectly ordinary party, Tana wakes up surrounded by corpses. The only other survivors of this massacre are her exasperatingly endearing ex-boyfriend, infected and on the edge, and a mysterious boy burdened with a terrible secret. Shaken and determined, Tana enters a race against the clock to save the 3 of them the only way she knows how, by going straight to the wicked, opulent heart of Coldtown itself.
Of a Coldtown? Like, are there
No,
Coldtowns
it's
or...
of Coldtown.
I think the person
it
writing
doesn't.
this synopsis
No, they're stupid.
didn't know what the book was about.
I think the thing is this person was stupid because you can't just go from saying it says that cold towns
And then
where walled
Coldtown.
cities and then just going cold town. And now we're going to talk about Coldtown as if it's the only cold town in existence.
As if that's the name of it rather than a category of things.
Pretty much.
All right, so this is
The Coldest Girl in Coldtown is a wholly original story of rage and revenge, of guilt and horror, of love and loathing from best-selling and acclaimed author Holly Black.
Good job, Holly Black.
Good for you.
A wholly original story, though. I am impressed if that is genuinely a truly original story.
I would giggle.
Because I have not read very many. And it also would be amazing with as many tropes as we've already run into if she pulled off that feat. So I'm like, good job, you, I
There
think.
with the pearl.
Yeah, I'm going to get it.
Before, you know, you
All right, so my name is Lies.
And I am Scandal.
And
we
thank
hope you
you
enjoyed that,
for
honestly.
joining us for this lovely dive into a what the heck are we reading?
Pretty much. So, if you'd like to actually join us for any further or future content relating to this, please subscribe to our channel, join us. We will always be interested in doing more. If you guys actually even have suggestions for books that you think we should read,
Or that
please
we would
suggest them.
find funny as heck. It would
We
be
love
lovely.
voice acting, honestly, and grinding casts are great fun for us to just sit there and discuss books and pull them apart, or just, have social commentary, that kind of thing.
On the other hand, if you liked some of our humor or commentary and
Mm-hmm.
Let's Plays are more your kind of thing, we do quite a few of those. This channel ultimately is going to be probably a split between the two, Let's Plays and grinding casts.
Yeah, pretty much.
But if you have feedback, suggestions, thoughts, we would love to hear from you. Thank you so much, and take care of yourself.
Yeah, enjoy your day, and don't forget to drink water. And also take your medication, or go to bed, or take care of yourself!
Don't drink the blood.
Oh my god, don't do that.
Bye.